Greetings and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ plus authors. I'm Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Sarah Pinsker. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's so nice to meet you.
You as well.
I want to talk about your book that is coming out very soon. I believe it's called Haunt Sweet Home. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And it goes on sale on September 3rd. And let's
you
just,
had that day.
all right, let's just put in a shameless plug. Where can our listeners find it?
I am hoping it should be available everywhere on that date. It should be, they're doing an audio version too. So it should be at your local indie bookstore and your library and anywhere you look for books. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. So if you want a signed copy, hit up one of my local stores and they'll be happy to, I'll make sure that I go there to sign. So that's the Ivy or Snug Books or Greedy Reads or Atomic Books or Bird in Hand. Any of those, I'll make sure that I make the rounds and I can personalize at those places too. So.
Oh, that's so wonderful of you. That's so
cool. It's nice. I feel like the pandemic made it so that some of these things that seemed like they were hard turned out not to be so hard. Like you can't tour to every place, but you could conceivably get a book from your local indie to someone else's hands with your actual signature in it.
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice. All right. So let's talk about Haunt Sweet Home and tell us about this story.
Sure. This is the story of Mara, who is still searching for what it is she wants to do in life. She's a little bit lost, and her cousin is the host of a show called Haunt Sweet Home, hence the name, which is it's a reality show that's a combination like fixer-upper show and a home improvement show and paranormal show, basically.
Okay.
So people who they look for people who've recently bought old houses and who want a little bit of help with the renovations, and the idea is that they renovate with the show's carpenters and designers by day, and then at night they sleep in the house. And the early seasons of the show were full of like things that they were actually finding. So it was, oh my goodness, we found bones, and they'll cut to commercial, and then they would come back and it would be a squirrel in the wall or something that, mm-hmm. sort of standard stuff. And then people got bored of it and they were going to be canceled. And so instead they started haunting it. So Mara finds out that she's on the night crew and that the night crew's job is to haunt the houses. And then things get weird from there.
Wow. Okay. So it's all kind of made up stuff that this team is doing. And
until it's not.
Yes. And then she becomes part of it. All right. Wow. That sounds really interesting. How did you come up with this storyline? I mean, this is super unusual. I don't think I've ever read anything like this.
Yeah. I actually, I don't remember how I came up with the idea of this show, but it makes an appearance in my second novel, We Are Satellites, where someone in the family that the novel is about is in the hospital and watching random shows on TV. And I tried to think of the most random thing I could think of that you would watch when you couldn't change the channel and you didn't have access to your streaming and whatever. And I came up with this show. I think I called it something else. I called it what's the name of that house? I called it like Ghost Hunters International or something instead of House Hunters.
Okay.
And then I decided that House Hunters would sue me. And I kept thinking I should actually pitch this show. I think this show could do something.
I know.
And then I thought, but I don't know how to pitch a show. And a friend of mine said, well, you know how to write a book. so I turned it into a book instead of a show.
Wow, that's great. And it does sound like it would make a great show too.
Yeah. I mean, why not both? It can still be. It can have a spinoff.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that went into the mix, Mara's grandmother is makes wooden sculptures, and Mara finds something in the wood that speaks to her. Um, but that was very much influenced by there's a museum here called the American Visionary Art Museum,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I go anytime I'm a little stuck for ideas because the work is just so weird and cool, and the stories on the wall are just interesting in themselves. And there's a sculpture there um, that was carved. The carver is anonymous, but the note on the wall says that he was a sanitarium patient who had dragged this back from the woods one day, this big piece of wood, and begged to be allowed to use a knife so that he could carve it because he just had to carve it. And he made a self portrait, and he himself had tuberculosis, and it's this incredibly just evocative single piece of wood sculpture with a concave chest because of the tuberculosis. It's not super detailed, but the lines of it, I can stand in front of it for hours.
Wow.
Um, and so that's the other thing that kind of went into the mix here.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty cool. That you went to the Visionary Museum to get a vision. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's the best place for it, really. It's right in the name.
it sounds like it. Um, so, Haunt Sweet Home is not your first novel, then?
No, this is my third. The first one is A Song for a New Day, uh, which is about a bunch of queer artists in a pandemic, musicians, and how you make art and find community when people have been separated. And that came out in 2019. Um, and then my second book is We Are Satellites, which is about two women and their children, um, and a piece of technology like a brain implant that is becoming ubiquitous, and people have to decide whether they're going to get it or not, and different members of the family do or do not, and it's sort of a very focused family story about a big ticket item.
Okay. And did you say A Song for a New Day
Yeah,
was about a pandemic?
it was, and it came out in 2019.
That's kind of like ominous or something.
Yeah, yeah, it got me a lot of uh notoriety and a Nebula Award. And
Congratulations.
thank you. That was very cool. And I think there's a writer named Theodore Sturgeon who always told his students, ask the next question, ask the next question. That's what I try to do when I do near future stuff. I try to ask the next question and figure out, okay, if it's a pandemic, how would it work? You know, what would doctors say in the early stages? Like
Hmm.
and I'm never interested in the big picture stuff, so I wasn't focusing on like governmental changes or policies or what was happening at large. I just wanted to know what would happen on the ground if you were a musician and this thing happened. And because I followed that pretty strictly, I have two characters that it changes between. One is a musician and one is a music fan, and yeah, I just kept asking questions about what would happen in a pandemic, and then I wrote a pandemic novel over the course of like 2016 to 2018 that came out in 2019, and then 6 months after it came out, everything shut down. So,
All right.
uh,
How true to real life was your vision? In
well, the things I got wrong, and I apologize. My neighbor is revving his truck, and I'm hoping that's not coming through the audio.
cannot hear
Um,
anything.
okay, cool. Uh, the things I got wrong were I didn't anticipate masks, and I didn't anticipate a the politicization of masks.
Yes.
That I just have a higher view of higher view of people, I guess.
Yeah.
And my characters tend to be striving for good, so I neglected to think of that. But other than that, like it starts, people don't know what's happening, but everyone's getting sick. They go to the hospital and there's a lot of people there. And if you're not sick enough, they just send you home because they don't have enough beds. And when people said, well, what should we do? They said, well, just wash your hands.
Hmm.
So I got, things open and close and open and close a lot in the first few months of it. Like the baseball season gets cut short and then they start it again, theaters close, and a lot of it is about like what happens to the people who are directly impacted by those things. So like, yes, you can't go to a show, but and maybe the musicians, depending on who they are, have enough money, but then what about like the people who run sound and the people who are on their team, and just kind of following all of those people.
Wow. That's
And then,
wild.
yeah,
You're just blowing my mind here.
yeah, and then the other kind of funny thing is just the club in the book is called the 2020,
No.
which got a lot of people really speculating. Um,
Yeah.
and the funny thing is like I'll tell your listeners like that it wasn't meant to be the year at all. What I was thinking was there's a lot of clubs in Baltimore that are just named after their address.
Uh-huh.
And there's streets that are named sequentially, and there is a club called the 1919. So I thought it would be fun to have a club called the 2020, and it would also be like hindsight. And I know what the address is. Like I know what block it's on in Baltimore. So so it's 2020 of that block was all that it was meant to be. But since I didn't specify that in the book, it looks pretty eerie.
Yeah. Wow. That is just something. That is just it's really cool actually. Um it's really great that all that is in your book, and you had no idea. You had no idea what was coming.
Yeah.
It's freaky. Um so do you always write sci-fi and fantasy? Is that your favorite genre?
I write. I write. I sort of bounce between genres. I've done a lot of near future. Like my novels up till now have been near future science fiction. Um, my short stories are a mix of science fiction and fantasy and what you might call dark fantasy or horror. Um, I don't think they're full horror. Like they don't scare me, but I'm the one writing them. Um,
You're right.
but
You have
they've got
control over all that.
yeah. So some of them might verge on horror. They're not gory ever, but some of them might be a little disturbing.
Thanks for the warning.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't think I usually calibrate it. I have an aunt who doesn't read anything that scares her, and I usually calibrate according to would I let her read this. So like Haunt Sweet Home, I told her she's safe to read. It's got a sort of horror aspect, and it looks like the haunt is in there. But it's more of a story about Mara's journey than about any. I'm careful with your heart in this book, I think.
Okay, got it. Awesome. Um, so do you read sci-fi, dark fantasy?
I read all of the above. Yeah, I like realist stuff too. I read pretty broadly. I like reading mysteries as palate cleansers. I but yeah, a lot of what I read is science fiction or fantasy or horror, not on the gory side, more closer to the dark fantasy side.
When you say
Um,
realist, what does that include? I'm not familiar with
oh,
that term.
like the stuff that you would call like not genre, the stuff that gets filed under fiction instead of science fiction or fantasy fiction. Um, so I mean, this like I do like to read also the stuff that doesn't have genre elements.
Hmm.
Um, uh, who do I like that falls in that category? Um, I conveniently have all my books right behind me, so I'm just turning around.
Sweet.
And Patchett and Barbara Kingsolver and
Got it. Yep.
uh, some historical stuff. Nicola Griffith's Hild and Meanwood.
Hmm.
They're not fantasy. They're historical fiction, really. But
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
um, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I like Ann Patchett. Um, so, as you said before, you have been nominated for and won several awards. Like, has being part of that whole award system, like, influenced your writing at all or changed your writing?
If I let it get into my head, it can mess with me sometimes. I start thinking, well, the next thing I write has to be, I can't let people down.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth and the way that I frame it most of the time when my brain is being good to me is, uh, those are value added things. Those are external rewards that are tremendously gratifying. To know that your peers or your readers thought enough of something that you wrote to put it on a list and then to vote for it. Those are wonderful things, and I am grateful for all of these shiny objects that are sitting in this room, which are quite attractive to look at, and they remind me that someone is reading my stuff, and that's lovely.
Yeah.
But they are
And
external.
appreciating it.
Yeah, yeah. They're external though, and I can't. They're nothing you can work towards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I go to a workshop. Sometimes that's a peer workshop where a bunch of us get together and read each other's stories, and that drives me. Like, I try to every time I get invited to that, I say, I'm going to try to. I just want to write the best story I can possibly write. And I want to write something I haven't written before. And when I do that, I usually come up with something good. And those stories are the ones that are often rewarded with the external awards that I can't control.
Well,
And I think it's because I push myself at those times, but it's also luck and it's exposure, and I don't pretend to have anything to do with that. It's a lovely thing when it happens, but I wouldn't put that on my list. They're on my bingo card, but not on my goals list, if that makes sense.
so all of these things just come together and just kind of, they were out of your control, but just created this space for someone to notice your work and reward you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been wonderful because I feel like I've been lucky so far in my what I consider still fairly short career, to have had the opportunities I've had, and some of that has come from some of those awards, I'm sure.
So how long does it typically take you to write like a complete novel? How much time do you spend on that?
It depends on the book. The first novel, the pandemic rock novel, I think I started in 2015 or 2016, and 20 wrote it and revised it and wrote it and revised it till maybe 2018, because that's when it would have had to be turned in. So yeah, it was something like that. And then the second novel, when you have a two-book deal, they turn around and they say, okay, and we need an outline for the next book, and the book is going to be due in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one I had to turn around and write very quickly. So I took an idea that I had been thinking about for a long time already, but that I hadn't actually written. And then there's a novel that I'm working on right now that's taken me years already, and it's going to continue to take me a little while longer. Just because it's historical, and I keep doing research, and I just am a sucker for research, and I forget to write the book because I'm so interested in the stuff I'm looking at, and
Going down rabbit holes.
oh, so many rabbit holes. And the rabbit holes have paid off. Like, along the way, I come across things that don't fit in the book but are great, and so I've turned those into stories. So I've had a few stories sort of in the world of that next novel, that have already come out, but the novel itself is taking a while, and in between, as I write that, I keep, I have stories that I've promised, that I have to interrupt that to write, and then also things like Haunt Sweet Home is just on the novella side of novel. It's a short book, and um, I can write those pretty quickly. Like a novella tends to be one one plot line and a fairly streamlined plot, and I can write those in the meantime. So I just keep writing things that come between me and finishing this third novel, which is all my way of saying it varies, and I try not to rush any particular project. I have stories that have taken me a day, and I have stories that have taken me 20 years. So I like to have patience with them, though, so
Yeah.
that they can be the best thing they can be.
That's amazing. So, do you have like a formal background in creative writing?
Not any more than I took the creative writing classes that were available in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the cool thing is actually that uh, the professor that I'd studied under at that time invited me back a few years ago to teach for a semester, and I've actually been teaching at my alma mater ever since. Just one class per semester, like one 300 or 400 level writing workshop,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm having a blast. I love my students, and it makes me think about. I have a little less time for writing, but it makes me think about writing in interesting ways that I think are useful to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. And that's really quite, a way of someone saying, hey, I think you're awesome and I'm digging your work is by, inviting you back to teach what they have taught you. So,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, a tremendous honor that I get to do what he did, and also a credit to the school that they recognize that the kids and he, despite being someone who writes realist fiction and is quite good at it, he recognized that a lot of the students are writing genre fiction and might benefit from having an instructor who was familiar with genre fiction.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Kudos to him too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, which is nice because yeah, like I don't remember anyone explicitly saying in school like you can't write this, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember not turning in the genre stories. I remember sort of focusing on the stuff that was more real life
Hmm.
focused, and it's nice that they don't even have to know that inclination existed. They can write what they want to write.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's quite a shift. Um, so, what is your favorite aspect about this whole writing process? And what is your writing process?
Uh, my writing process is walking my dogs.
All right.
Um, uh, that's the and by which I mean like if someone else is trying to take advice out of that and they don't have a dog, that's okay. Running works too. Cooking, folding laundry, uh, driving, like anything where you can kind of get away from the screen and tell yourself a story.
Mm-hmm.
And and the trick is that I think we fill a lot of our empty time these days. Like if you're unloading the dishwasher, you probably put on a podcast or something, or if you're cooking, you put on a podcast or you put on music. Like we don't really sit around with dead air as much as as we used to, and I think those times are important, and that's why sometimes you get to the screen and you freeze because that's your dead air. And I need a better phrase than dead air because that sounds like a negative thing. But what I'm looking for is the space where you're alone with your thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
also not thinking about them super hard, like not putting pressure on yourself. So on a dog walk, I'm looking at the flowers and I'm looking at the, trying to guess what they're going to chase next and whatever.
You just
And
don't
then,
have all that outside stimulation, really.
yeah. And then you kind of let yourself tell a story instead
Yeah.
of putting pressure on yourself. So if I can get the idea, or get the idea of what I'm going to write for that day. Okay, so if I'm working on this chapter, then okay, this is where I was yesterday, so I need to think about what she's going to do now, and this is so where is she that this can happen, and I can tell myself all of that stuff, and it's like starting a stick shift car on a downhill. You can kind of move into the gears, and you're already rolling, and so by the time I sit down at the computer, I know what I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
to some extent. I haven't written it out. I just have a picture in my mind of what's coming next,
Mm-hmm.
and so I never have that fear of a blank page.
Gotcha.
um and I love that moment, because then you can kind of enter a little bit of a flow state where you have an idea of what's happening, but when you're really lucky, my favorite thing is when the characters just do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're there for it, like it's your fingers are the conduit, but it's happening because it had to happen, and they said it had to happen. um
That's cool.
and
Yeah.
and just following what they say has to go on.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Just kind of letting the process work itself. Um,
Exactly.
Characters speak to you, and you write down what they're doing.
Yeah. And if that, it doesn't have to be a mystical thing though. Like if they're not speaking, then I start out and they can correct me.
Yeah, that's cool. So, um, writing, I think of writing as a like kind of a solitary undertaking. And would you say like you're solitary about that? Are you solitary about all aspects of your life, or just particular to writing? Are you part of a writing group? How's that for you?
I like communal writing a lot, and I've done a fair bit of it. Not super recently. Recently, I'm in the house a lot, and I think my writing time sometimes suffers for it, because the when I've got a real deadline that I'm up against, the thing that works best for me is to call a friend and say, meet me at the coffee shop, and we go to the coffee shop, and um, I tell myself that there's no Wi-Fi. I don't ever put the Wi-Fi on my computer. I don't ever put it on my phone. I pretend my phone doesn't exist, and I pretend I'm performing the act of writer, like a role,
Mm-hmm.
and that everyone around is judging me about it. Um, so they wouldn't, like I don't want to let people down by not writing, since I've taken on the role of writer
Yeah.
while I'm there, and I can get a lot done when I do that. When I just say I'm in this place, this place is not a place where I can do other things. I have to write.
So when
Um,
you're at home, do you get distracted?
very.
Okay.
Um, like right this second, there are two dogs who are staring at me and wagging their tails because it's 6 o'clock, and they think I've forgotten something,
Aw. All right.
and
So tell us
lock
about your
them out of the
dogs.
room. I have two dogs. One is they're both rescues. The older one is a rat terrier,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a murderer with a heart of gold. Um, he kills anything that moves in the yard, but he's also very snuggly. And then the baby is a pandemic puppy. He's a total mystery. At some point, I'm gonna offer one of the local rescues the chance to do like a 50-50 raffle, where or like a football pool where everybody guesses what he is, because he is just a mystery.
Oh.
He's 40 pounds of maybe terrier, maybe herding dog, maybe who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
He talks like a husky.
Oh.
He's got a tail like a husky. He herds like a border collie.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
and he looked like a terrier when we got him, but I don't know. He just grew. He's a weird little dog. Very
So are you
very
gonna
good
have his
guy.
DNA done?
You know, yeah, we'll do that if we do the football pool
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Up until then, the mystery is kind of fun.
Okay. All right. Well, enjoy that mystery. That's so cool. And I like that they're both right there with you.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. So what is it about like sci-fi and dark fantasy that pulls you in, that is the draw for you?
I love the what if. I'm kind of I'm just and what if is what ties all of the speculative genres together. The science fiction what if is, you know, is often, what if this technology, and then the fantasy one is what if magic, or what if this was different in the world, and the horror one is a often if it's speculative horror, it's often what if this was loose in the world,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But yeah, those the ideas that I'm drawn to are the ones that you can kind of uh, follow a character through a journey as they wrestle with some strange what if.
You have to be pretty creative, I think, to write speculative fiction of any kind, um, because you're creating this world that doesn't exist, um, and it's all on you. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and you can do it with only changing a couple of things. But it's on you. But that's also the Barbara Kingsolver said once. Someone asked her, like, do you use real people in your stories? And she said, why would I, when I can invent people who will do my bidding?
it's true.
And it's sort of like that. Like I mean, this world is this world, but it's kind of interesting to say, what if this thing was different, and then follow that down the road a little ways, and see how that would change things. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be for the better. You can visit positive futures, and you can also do the don't go this way route. um my second novel with the brain implant, um Elon Musk came out with the whole Neuralink thing not long after that book came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, not that brain implants are anything new at all, but
Mm-hmm.
but the like I can use that book as a cautionary tale. And there was a kind of cool thing that happened where this uh, book club run by, I guess it was the University of Toronto, but it was kind of in conjunction with a think tank. They got together and they had a whole bunch of people, including astronauts and journalists and all these people, basically have a debate over, as if it was real, as
Mm-hmm.
if the device was already out in the world, and it was a debate about whether schools should mandate them or not. So they just took the premise and ran with it, and it was very gratifying, because that's the kind of question that you hope people will ask. Like, should we, with any new technology, should we rush and put this in the schools, or should we wait? Should we rush and put this on every computer, or should we wait?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all the questions with the AIs that you can't escape right this second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh. That's cool. Yeah,
yeah.
that
So
kind of reminds me of what was that movie that was just recently out? Was it with Willem Dafoe? Um, Poor Things.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, you would like that. Yeah, I would recommend that to you. I think you would like it.
He's a director that sometimes makes me uncomfortable, and I think he intends to make you uncomfortable. But
Oh
I
yeah,
have to
yeah,
enter his worlds with care.
yeah.
My deep dark secret is that I'm a total wuss, and I can write things that I definitely can't watch, and can sometimes not even read. But like I can read them when I write them, because I know what happens. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's a director that I have to get someone else to vet it first for me. So I'll take your recommendation. But
Okay. Yeah, I am a wuss also.
all
I
right.
I don't like things that cause anxiety, um, or tension. I don't like horror movies, but this had like a witty twist to it.
All right. Well,
And
I'll trust you on that.
okay, all right. Let me know what you think.
Thanks. I'll do
So,
that.
do you have like a favorite book that you've read over and over? I know you've listed, talked about some authors that you like, but what about a book?
I have a hard time picking favorite things. I was saying that to my wife right before we got on here because that was the one question that I was agonizing over.
Ah,
Um, because people often ask that. I'm good at like, what are you currently reading? But the funny thing with favorites is like, I'm one of three daughters, so I have two sisters. I have one niece and one nephew. I have two dogs. There's a lot of these like you cannot possibly choose things in my life.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I don't do a whole lot of rereading. Um, if the question was, uh, what's the book that without even knowing someone you recommend because you love it so much that you think anyone would want to read it.
Hmm.
Um, that book might be Hearts of Horses by Molly Gloss, um, which is a sort of a Western. Molly Gloss is a fourth generation Oregonian, and it's about um, a woman in sort of frontier days of Oregon who is a horse trainer. And Molly Gloss is someone whose career I very much admire because she's written um, far future generation ship stuff, and she's written cryptids, and she's written westerns, and she's written uh, fantasy, and she's just such a good writer that I'll follow her to whatever she writes.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm not familiar with her or that book. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, that highly recommend.
All right. Very cool. I will definitely do that. So, tell me, Sarah, do you enjoy hearing from your readers?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and how can they contact you?
There is a contact form on my website is probably the best way.
Okay.
Um, and I'm on these days. I'm on like Instagram and Blue Sky. I still have my Twitter account, but I check it when I need to. But I'm not really there anymore.
Yeah, I don't do Twitter anymore.
But yeah, if they have something they need to make sure I see, they can go through the website,
Okay.
which somewhat reliably dumps things into my inbox and occasionally dumps them into my spam where I find them later and feel very bad about it.
Okay, so if someone Googled your name, they would find your website.
Sarahpinsker.com. Yep, as long as
Okay.
as long as they can spell it, they can find it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So, do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
Uh, I guess my parting words, since we've talked a lot about craft, would be just step away from the computer, let your mind wander, and tell yourself a story.
Oh, that's such good advice. That really is. People don't do that enough. We're tied to machines.
We really are. And every second I look at my phone and I know that there's, yeah, that's the thing that my dogs do for me more than anything else is that it's time that I guess, and I could put on a podcast, but I know that that's, if I put on a podcast, then I'm not writing. So
Yep. Yep, you're hooked.
yeah.
Yes. Well, that is all the time we have for today. But thank you, Sarah Pinsker, for joining us. And we look forward to your novel, Haunt Sweet Home, that comes out on September 3rd. And you can get that wherever you get your favorite books. And you can check out Sarah's website. Again, that's sarahpinsker.com. And you can find her on some social media accounts too. So thanks again. And, that's all the time we have for today. And I'm Anita Kelly. And thanks for joining Liz talk about books, baby. So until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.